Hey, Weasel Words here, and yeah, news about Steam and their changing um, content policy. There's been a lot of controversy at the moment about what games are allowed into Steam and what games are not. Um, Particularly with one game called Active Shooter, which is a simulation game where someone, um, well, it's along the lines of Grand Theft Auto, GTA, I guess, in that anything goes. It's a sandbox in which you can um, take control of weapons and run around a school and shoot. So it's called Active Shooter. Controversy started when the game was banned from Steam, but it turns out that a statement from one of the Valve spokesmen, Doug Lombardi, said that the game's developer and publisher is a man who had been banned from Steam last fall when he was operating under a different name. Lombardi described the developer as a troll with a history of customer abuse, publishing copyright material, and user review manipulation, which is obviously against Steam policy. Valve discovered that man was the developer behind Active Shooter when they began investigating amid controversy surrounding the up-and-coming game's release. Lombardi said, "We're not going to do business with people who act like this towards our customers or Valve." Now, the BBC also is reporting on this as well. Steam's owner Valve said it had dropped the game because its developer had a history of bad behaviour. And the left-wing press was cheering this as that they'd managed to influence Steam in their decision to do this. But obviously these two statements clearly show that that's not the case. So there's been a lot of controversy about, what Steam would allow in. A lot of the liberals and middle centrist people were saying, why don't you let the market decide what's good for Steam and what games should be allowed in there? Why do you have to listen to a minority of people? Surely the best decision or the best means of deciding what gets onto Steam is the consumer, the actual community that you work and live in Steam. And so Steam have struggled to put together a policy. Who gets to be on the Steam store. So this is a really good article which is on the Steam blog. You can find it there. Recently there's been a bunch of community discussions around what kind of games we're allowing into Steam and onto the Steam store. And it's often the case that discussion caused us to spend some time examining what we were doing and why we were doing it and how we could be doing it better. Decision making in this space is particularly challenging. Now, I think that statement comes because of the left-wing pressure, a small minority of left-wing activists who are putting a lot of pressure on on companies. We've seen that with Twitter, we've seen it with YouTube, we've seen it with Google. A very small minority of small-minded people making decisions for the rest of people. So Steam's obviously spent a lot of time coming up with this policy. Contrary to many assumptions, this isn't a space we've automated. Humans at Valve are very involved, with groups of people looking at content of every controversial title submitted to us. I think the automation hint there is a throwback to what YouTube have done, and we can see that their algorithms are just absolutely horrendous. And then the people who are sitting behind those algorithms are obviously a bunch of left-wing radicals. So it's very, very difficult to fight back against YouTube or Google with anything that they deem as not worthy content. Similarly, people have falsely assumed that the decisions are heavily affected by our payment processors or outside interest groups. Nope, it's just grappling with a really hard problem. And what you're seeing here is a really pragmatic approach from a company, which I'm really pleased that we're seeing. You know, they're saying that they're looking at the policies that they've got. They've looked at what other companies have done and the mess that other companies have made. Twitter, YouTube, Google being classic examples of policies that don't work. Unfortunately, our struggle has resulted in a bunch of confusion among its customers, developers and partners, and even their own employees. So we've spent some time thinking about where we want to be on this, and we'd like to talk about it now. But we also think it's critical to talk about how we've arrived at this position. So the challenges that this problem is not simply about whether or not Steam should contain games with adult or violent content. Instead, it's about whether the store contains games with an entire range of controversial topics: politics, sexuality, racism, gender, violence, identity, and so on. In addition, there are controversial topics that are particular to games, like what even constitutes a game, or what level of quality is appropriate before something is released into the store. Common questions we ask ourselves when trying to make decisions and help in this space: what do players wish we would do? And what would make them happy? What's considered acceptable discussion, behaviour or imagery varies significantly around the world, socially and legally, and when we pick a single country or state, the legal definitions around these topics can be too broad or vague to allow us to avoid making subjective interpretations, interpretive decisions. The harsh reality of this space that lies at the root of the dilemma is that there's absolutely no way we can navigate it without making some of our players really mad. Now, that statement in itself shows that they understand the problem, okay? This is not a geographical problem. This is an international, a web problem, okay? There are different laws in different countries. What's acceptable in one country might not be acceptable in another. So I'm quite pleased that they've put such thought into this. In addition, Valve is not a small company. We're not a homogenous group. The online debate around these topics play out in Valve as well. We don't all agree on what deserves to be on the store. So when we say there's no way of avoiding making a bunch of people mad when we're making decisions in this space, we're including our own employees, their families and communities in that too. So what we've ended up going back to, one of the principles in the forefront of our minds when we started Steam, and more recently as we worked on Steam Direct to open the store and to many more developers. Valve shouldn't be the one that decides this. No, it shouldn't be the one. They're taking the exact policy that I think most corporate companies should take. The strong-minded, strong direction, those with good ethical values, realise that they, making decisions, affect people around the world. People with different values, different things. And they shouldn't be the arbiters of that. So what they're hinting at here is that the community, the people who use Steam and put games on there and the community that purchases those games, they're the ones that should be the arbiters of that decision. If you're a player, we shouldn't be choosing for you what content you can and can't buy. If you're a developer, we shouldn't be choosing content you're allowed to create. Those choices should be yours to make. Our role should be to provide a system and tool that supports your efforts to make these choices for yourself and to help you do it in a way that makes you feel comfortable. Thank you, Steam. Thank you for this. This is really, really good and a strong, strong message that I wish a lot more companies around on the internet would stand by. With that principle in mind, we've decided the right approach is to allow everything onto the Steam store except those things that we decide are illegal. So they'll have a legal team there who will decide what is legal and what isn't legal. And they've added to that or straight up trolling. So if they think somebody's put something up there just to get a reaction from its community members, they are within their rights then to make a decision to remove that. Okay. Taking this approach allows us to focus less on trying to police what should be on Steam and more about building those tools to give people controls over what content they see. We already have some tools, but they're too hidden and not nearly comprehensive enough. We're going to enable you to override our recommendation algorithms and hide games containing the topics you're not interested in. So if you don't want to see anime games on your store, you'll be able to make that choice. If you want more options to control exactly what kind of games your kids see when they browse the store, you'll be able to do that. And it's not just players that need better tools either. It's developers who build controversial content should have to deal with harassment because of their game. Their game exists. And we'll be building tools and options to support them too. So if a bunch of trolls go after one particular game because they don't find it appeals to their values or their narrow-minded political viewpoint, the tools will be there to highlight which of those community members are doing that and hopefully take action against them. And likewise, if content providers start to produce stuff that is either illegal or just straight up trolling, then the community will be able to highlight that as well to Steam and say, this content's a bit suspect. Okay? So this tool, the tools that they're talking about developing here work both ways, which I think is a great compromise. A fantastic compromise. And I wish that YouTube and Twitter would take a leaf out of Steam's book. To me, this is a great statement that they've come out with. And what it does is it stops these small-minded left-wing activists that have very narrow-minded views about what people can and can't see in their content and game store, from lowers their voice because they may be active, but they're not active community members. So, let's see what else it says. As we mentioned earlier, laws vary around the world, so we're going to need to handle this on a case-by-case basis. But that's fair enough, yeah. Laws are different in Europe as they are in America and in Asia. So, I think this is a sensible approach. As a result, we'll almost certainly continue to struggle with that one for a while. Well, yeah, they'll need legal teams in different areas of the world to say, yeah, this crosses the law in this particular country, and therefore we recommend that you withdraw it from the marketplace. Our current thinking is that we're going to push developers to further disclose any potential problematic content in their games during the submission process, and cease doing business with them that refuse to do so honestly. I think that's fair, you know. If your game has controversial content in it and you're producing it, I think you should also be aware of where that content will be seen as controversial geographically as well. If you're not sure and you only know locally that the content of this game is okay, then you could state that, and then you could state that. And probably Steam would then investigate further to see where that might cross the line in some particular countries. Our current thinking is that we're going to push developers to further disclose potential problematic content in their games during their submission process, rejecting games that don't pass until their issues have been resolved. So what does this mean? It means that Steam Store is going to contain something that you hate and don't think should exist. Unless you don't have any opinions, that's guaranteed to happen. Okay? So, this is not going to be a safe space, guys. You're going to have to decide what content that you want. Steam will be the platform to provide it. And they'll give you the tools to say, yeah, I want to see that. No, I don't want to see that. They won't give you the tools, right, to say, no, you can't look at that. Or you can't do that. That's not what this world is about. That's not what the internet is about. Okay? It also means that games we allow into the store will not be a reflection of Valve's values. Now, this is really, really important statement, that, because we've seen very, very clearly that YouTube is not an open space anymore. Twitter's not an open space. What they do is they impose their values on the users of that platform. Okay? Twitter used to be an open marketplace of ideas. Some of them controversial. It was famous and blew up, really, during the Arab Spring, because it became a platform that people could speak freely on, and the platform wouldn't interfere with them. Now it's turned into a left-wing, Trotskyist valued safe space where you can't say anything without running foul of ridiculous laws that are arbitrary depending on which particular person is looking at them when they get submitted to their team of experts. So, reading further on, to be explicit about that, if we allow games onto store, it doesn't mean we approve or agree with what you're trying to say. If you're a developer of offensive games, it isn't us siding with you against the people you're offending. There will be people throughout Steam community who hate your games and hope that you fail to find an audience. And there were people here at Valve who feel exactly the same way. However, offending someone shouldn't take away the game's voice. We believe you should be able to express yourself like everyone else. Find others who want to play your game. And that's it. This is a fantastic article, guys. Go and read it. Go and give it the thumbs up, because these guys have... oh yeah, I must be logged in. Yeah, okay. These guys have really come out to bat for free speech. Okay, saying that they're not the ones who are going to be who censor it. They're going to leave it to the marketplace, capitalism, the community to decide. I hope they build into their algorithms something that weights the community members' active use of Steam, so that they don't get a bunch of trolls logging in, creating Steam accounts and trying to influence the marketplace, because that would be terrible. That would be the death of Steam. And all I want to say is thank you, Steam, for this. Thank you very much. I applaud your approach. Well done, guys.